Hello. Today's tool is clarity over niceness. Clarity over niceness. Let me tell you a situation that I was in years ago that led me to even consider this tool and make this tool a part of the foundation of tools that I work with and that I often offer to my clients. Here's the situation I was in. This was a work situation, a high conflict work situation years ago. The situation was that we were in disagreement about something that was important and on which we needed to make a decision. And I was being too nice. So what does it mean that I was being too nice? I over-rotated on niceness and even, and this is saying something a little bit not great about me, I over-rotated at that time on conflict avoidance towards the goal of collaboration. This is a team that I was going to keep working with, and I knew I would keep working with them. So I over-rotated towards collaboration. Let's everybody feel good about this discussion. I already had a number of tools about how to have collaborative conversations. So truthfully, I over-rotated on those. I thought, this is what I need to focus on. This is how we need to bring the whole team together. But really, in doing that, the result was that we kept having that conversation again and again. And it wasn't a fun conversation, and it was an important conversation strategy-wise, leadership-wise, where our business was going-wise. And I failed for quite a few rotations to bring in the clarity. So for me, I learned this lesson, I would definitely say the hard way with that business a number of years ago. And I actually had to have someone who was pretty close to me have a very clarity-rich, hard conversation with me and say to me, Senia, you're balancing different values, but really you need to understand that in this situation, clarity is more important than niceness. Yes, you can keep collaboration, maybe on this team, on other teams, you can keep all those collaborative tools. But in this situation, you're letting it go into a bad place because you're not prioritizing clarity over niceness. That hit home for me. That was a pain, that wasn't fun, and I took that into future situations. When do we use a tool like this? We use this when two values are at stake. They're both important. Niceness or collaboration or a kindness theme to the group that you're working with, whether this is work or home, and clarity, being direct. And the ironic thing is, I'm still thinking back to my situation. I actually love directness. I love transparency, and I try to do that in everything. It also comes naturally to me. I prefer that people interact with me in a direct way. But in that situation where I wanted collaboration to be so high, I decreased my value on directness and on clarity. So I needed to rebalance those. Okay, so when do you use it? You use it when these two values are both coming at you and they're at play. Again, I'll put this up again. When do you use it? When two values are important. Niceness or collaboration, you can call that, and clarity or directness. But just because you know two values are at play doesn't mean you necessarily need to use clarity over niceness. But you have that feeling in your gut. You have that situation when 30%, 50% of your mind space is spent thinking about a situation. You know when they're at conflict, when they're not just in balance. Now, I want to reference other tools that we've given you here and that our coaches have shared, tools like integrative thinking and polarity thinking. Integrative thinking, that there might be two opposite poles and they might both be of value. For example, I need to collaborate with my team and I also really need to be direct. Or the very typical example is an early in their career person who says, I really want to go out and make some money, but I also want to do what I'm passionate about. How do I balance these two? And integrative thinking says, hey, you actually can hold both. How do you try to move towards accomplishing both? Polarity thinking is really similarly, it's a bit of an and as opposed to an or discussion. So I know you have these tools and you might be thinking, hey, Senia, why can't you be both clear and nice? Ideally you can, and ideally you can do that in your how. So how? Let's say you're with me and let's say you buy my argument. Okay, Senia, in some high conflict situations, or really in any situations, you may realize that those values are pulling against each other in yourself. And you may have decided, okay, I need to be more clear. How do I do it? This is how you do it. You check in with yourself. And you already have a lot of tools about checking in with yourself. You've heard Leanne Mallory speak about embodiment. You've heard Susan Bernstein speak about This, if you want a sensational life, listen to your senses. You know how to check in with yourself. So check in. And again, if you're over rotating, if a significant part of your day is thinking about this conflict, then something's a little bit not right there. And maybe what's not right is you haven't upped your own ante on clarity. Okay, so one is check in with yourself. Just check in with yourself, see how you feel about the situation, know where you stand, and know if it is important for you to up the ante on clarity. The next thing, speak clearly. And there are components to speak clearly. I'll tell you advice that one of my favorite professors in business school at the Stanford GSB, Irv Grousbeck, one of the most important pieces of advice that I've ever heard him give is treat each conversation with the seriousness that it's supposed to have, or the right context. So for example, if you are about to lay somebody off, don't call them into your office and say, hey, how are you? You're about to give them serious, direct news. Just sit down and do it. You might even do it in their office. Right now, we're all remote, but you might do it. Think of the context, think of getting to the point. So speak clearly means from the beginning, as you've prepped yourself. So you check in with yourself, you've made the decision that you need to be clear, and then think about how you will speak clearly. Again, that doesn't mean saving it till your last fifth point in a conversation. You may need to lead with it in order to speak clearly. You may need to give people a heads up that we're going to speak about a topic, and we may need to revisit it to get closure. But you're opening yourself up to being direct in the right way that's right for this context. And third is check in that the message is understood. And you can do this in a variety of ways. You could say, hey, could you just play back for me what you heard? I want to make sure we're on the same page. And I have to say, this is a very funny thing. I have two kids, and my son is 6 years old. And every once in a while, just because I use this language, he'll use the language of on the right page with me. So he'll say things like, so we're going to buy a new Lego tomorrow, right? Are we on the same page? So are we aligned? Are we on the same page? So check in that the message is understood. You can ask someone to say it back to you. You can ask them what questions they have about it. You can ask them questions about the message you've just delivered. But check in, because if you're doing this, if you're stepping up and figuring out that clarity is more important than niceness in this situation, and if you're speaking clearly, the last thing you want to do is to have that same conversation again tomorrow or the next day. So check in that your message is understood. And I will leave you with a beautiful quote that you may be already familiar with. This is a quote by Brené Brown. Clarity is kind. Unclarity is unkind. I have a really close friend and colleague with whom I speak about this topic, about clarity over niceness. It comes up from time to time. And when we do, her response is immediately the Brené Brown, clarity is kind, unclarity is unkind. And I so agree with that. Check in with yourself. I'll just summarize what we've talked about. When these two values are at play and you're noticing you have that sensation that you need to be clearer, and how by checking in with yourself, speaking clearly, and then checking in that message is understood. Thank you for joining us. Clarity over niceness. We look forward to seeing you again later this week. We are here Monday to Friday. Let me tell you what we have coming up for the rest of the week. Today is Wednesday. Tomorrow, Thursday, we have Nancy Ankowitz, and she's going to talk about the 5 mistakes you are likely already making in video meetings. So in meetings like this, where you have someone direct on the other side, what mistakes are we already making? She's wonderful. I think you'll love tomorrow's session. And then on Friday, we have Kelly Beischel, and she'll be speaking to us about the SCARF model, which you may have heard about a little bit before. That's a model that's good to check in with when you might be feeling worried or anxious, but how the SCARF model can inform better leadership. We're here every day for 20 minutes to give you a crisp understanding of a new tool or new idea. Glad to be with you. See you again Monday to Friday. I'm going to check in now on comments that we have, but in general, this is the closing of the formal part of our session. All right, so what are people saying? People are saying that thanks for sharing. This is delightful. I don't know who it is, but thanks for sharing today's insights. Bonus points for Irv Grousbeck and Brené Brown. Big fan of both of those. And somebody else is saying these are the things that you needed to hear today. Delighted to hear that. All the best. See you tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific.